Hey guys, good morning. Hope all is well. Today is March 12th, Tuesday. Hope you guys are good. Uh, the CPI number today was interesting. I think I had posted about an hour before the CPI number came in, which was a little bit hot, more than expected. Morgan Stanley had given, or JP Morgan, sorry, had given 5 different scenarios with different possibilities and probabilities. 37% was one, 25% was the other, and so on and so forth. And the one that played out was the 25, 27% one, which said that if it came between 1 and 2%, or if it came between 0.1 and 0.4, then there's a probability the market will go up 1 to 5%. This is what the market ended up doing. So they gave a lot of scenarios and say the number one scenario didn't play out, but the number two scenario played out to the T, in fact. So it's still very interesting to see what the reaction was and why the reaction is that way. If it had been a very easy print on the inflation, it would have said, okay, this is good. Fed is going to cut interest rates in June. Now, my sense is I don't think the Fed is probably going to cut interest rates in June. I've always said from the beginning of the year, or in October, actually, last year, actually, that second half is when we should expect some interest rate cuts and not 5 as the market, some people have been expecting, more closer to 2 or 3. And again, during that point of time, if the inflation print comes out a little bit lower than expected, there's always a possibility to raise lower interest rates much faster. But in the absence of clear data, and especially because there's a 12-month lag on housing, which is not as volatile, but it's still been the biggest challenge. And across the board, inflation has been tough. So in terms of where the market heads from here, I've always been of the position I'm still invested until there is any information that gives me the confidence that it's actually heading lower. Right now, there's way too much money on the sidelines in the market still, which gives me confidence that stocks might maybe settle for a little bit, but they're heading a little bit higher as well. Okay, so one of the stocks that showed up on the radar is Duolingo. Now, I've been a big fan of this company. In 2018, there's a very nice podcast, by the way, that you guys should listen to. It's called How I Built This. How I Built This. I think it's an NPR podcast, and it is an interview with different founders. And Louis von Cern, who is the founder of Duolingo, was actually on the podcast with the host Guy Raz about maybe 5 years ago. And that was the first time I had a chance to listen to Louis, and I was very impressed with the interview. He also previously sold this company, which was a capture company, to Google. Extremely sharp guy. Carnegie Mellon, very good background, very sharp in his ability to be able to figure out what things seem to work, experiment very frequently, and consistently move the ball forward. So I like Duolingo a lot. I've always liked it, but I've never held the stock for more than a trade to a large extent. So I missed the whole move from 80 to 190, I think, or 180. No, 140 is when I started buying it, 140, because I mentioned it consistently on Twitter. Like the stock, buy it, like the stock, buy it. And now it is at 280. It's almost 100% up. No, 227, almost about 50% up from where I mentioned it. So take a look at Duolingo. But today's discussion and YouTube video is more about why I think this is a long-term hold, not just a trade. This is a terrific, terrific company in the midst of one of the biggest challenges that is happening in the industry overall, which is the impact of AI on education and what that means overall for all of the educational market, if you will. Now, to give you a little bit of context overall, Duolingo started as an app that primarily is used by people to learn new languages. That market itself, where people want to learn a second language, either because they are interested in it or because they're going to a new location. For example, a lot of people, when they go on summer vacation to Europe, to France, or maybe to Spain, or they want to go to Mexico or South America, they usually end up learning Spanish or French or German or whatever language they want to be able to do. And it's usually conversational language learning. That market itself was a fairly sleepy market. Most of you guys probably remember Rosetta Stone, which is back in the 90s when I was a school student. I would be very impressed with Rosetta Stone's Spanish DVDs, actually CDs before DVDs, and I'd put them on my car on my commute and try to learn as much Spanish as I could. That was a little bit of a different way to learn. But the key part that has happened is since the introduction of the mobile phone, the capability to learn, experiment, find out what helps you learn has dramatically changed. So Duolingo started as an app that helps you learn languages, but I think that's not the story going forward. And I think there's an inflection point right now where the company is fairly small. They're doing about 500 million or so in revenue. They're still under about a $10 billion market cap. And I think, or actually, no, they're a little bit more than that. We'll figure it out when we go through the details. But they're about 20 times, yeah. So about 19 times, yeah. They're doing about about less than $10 billion in market cap. But the key part is how they can grow going forward in education, moving beyond language learning to math learning, to learning music, to learning English for both kids who are in America and also not native language speakers outside of America. More than 50% of the revenue actually comes from outside of America. These are people that want to learn English. They want to be able to pass an English language test, either TOEFL or IELTS. So this, I think, helps Duolingo target a much bigger TAM than just the language learning market. So I wanted to go through why I like Duolingo a lot, where I think the opportunity is, and why you should look at this stock for the long term. So Duolingo itself helps you by means of an app, and I'll go through some examples so you get a feel for it as well. The app allows you to be able to learn in small modules. The monetization of Duolingo is primarily 70, 80, even 90% in many quarters has been through subscriptions. So individual users will buy a subscription to Duolingo when they want to remove the ads from Duolingo and open access to more classes or more lessons and also to tests, etc. So Duolingo essentially helps you be able to learn, and they monetize by individual subscriptions. Roughly about 6 million, a little more than 6 million last quarter were the total number of paid subscriptions. Roughly about 88 to 90 million people are monthly active users, and about 27, 30 million, let's make it easy, 90 million monthly active users, 30 million daily active users, 6.6 million paid users. Okay, so keep that in mind when we go through this. The Duolingo method essentially starts with learning by doing. So they have interactive lessons. So if you ever had a chance, it's free. Just download it, play with it. You'll get a sense for what that is. Even if you don't want to learn a language, just to be able to get a sense for it. I've done this for Spanish. I've done this for, actually, I wanted to learn Chinese. So it's a very, very good way, or Mandarin, sorry, is what I wanted to learn. Sorry. It's a very good way to be able to learn and pick up new things. And as a learning language system, it is very good. So you learn by interactive lessons. The second part of it is they help you learn it in a personal way. So as the app, you start to interact with it, it adapts and changes the lesson patterns. So it helps you slow down when things are complicated and helps you learn faster if you picked up things much faster. So with the mobile phone, with the app, it is possible for you to personalize education, which is the holy grail for education. Same for medicine, by the way. You want to get personalized medication as opposed to a single dosage that helps for everybody, right? They also now are focused on curriculum-based, pedagogy-based information learning. So it's not just language. They're going to math, they're going to music, they're going to English, they're going beyond just the simple language learning capabilities. Now, the other part of it is they give you very small, what they call bite-sized lessons, and they have gamification built in. So they give you, I'll show you different examples of gamification they've done. It's not just very simple, you earn a badge type of a thing. They've got a lot of gamification in the system to help consistently make learning as a habit. They've got a lot of hooks in the product that help you come back to the application. They've got a very easy, nice way to be able to get people to feel happy, which is the feel the delight portion to help you build your confidence. So not just language learning, number one, they're moving into math, they're moving into music, which for theoretical music. So I learned music theory for about a year or so, all the way from being able to read music, being able to go ahead and do the explanation of, or sorry, once you read the music off of the music sheet, you actually want to be able to play. It takes a lot of hand-eye coordination to a certain extent and also consistency. But as you start to practice on the piano by looking at the music sheet, you know what is a C, what is a D, what is a D minor, etc. You'll be able to learn a bit faster. You can do that now with Duolingo. All right, so what does Duolingo form at the very simple level? The app allows you to be able to go through a series of questions and a series of lessons. Now, this is math. This is where I was really blown away by Duolingo, not so much from the Spanish learning, which I went through a little bit, not so much from the Mandarin, but really when they started helping you with mathematics. My kids started using it ages ago, nearly about 4 or 5 years ago. That time it wasn't for math. They have Spanish as a second language that they're learning at school. But the fact that you can do math now helps you take Khan Academy, which is typically good for grades, I think 5 and above, to now kids who can use it on the mobile app, even from grades 1 to 5. And especially good for people that are not native English speakers. The biggest growth for Duolingo is coming from South America, it's coming from Europe, it's coming from Asia, where people have to learn English either to be able to communicate, either to work, or other things. And the most number of users actually for Duolingo is also coming from people that want to be able to communicate with other people at work. So a lot of freelancers are starting to use the application Duolingo quite a bit to be able to communicate with their clients. If you're staying, and if let's say, for example, you're a designer or a developer in Latvia or in Ukraine, or if you're in Brazil and you want to be able to communicate not just via written, which is what a lot of people do, but also understand the basics of being able to do verbal communication. Duolingo is being paid for by a lot of these guys on an ongoing basis. So they also help you learn not only from the standpoint of memorizing and rote, but also speak. So because of the phone, now you can speak to it. You can say, for example, if it says, you know, say the word fabric, you can actually speak to it and it'll correct you. That's amazing in terms of the ability to be able to go ahead and move things forward from your learning capability. That's very, very good, right? Um, and also, it gives you a lot of different ways to be able to learn different types of things and different skills. And Duolingo has done a very good job of being able to learn and teach from what you have learned in interaction with the app. So imagine if you want to be able to learn even things like the alphabet, they actually teach you cursive writing. I'm pretty sure kids are going to start using this a lot more. And already the education system in the US, there are quite a few schools. They have Duolingo for education. They are starting to use the Duolingo app on their tablets to be able to help people learn, understand, and be able to move at their own pace. This is one of the best examples of AI personalization that you can think of overall in the education system. Now, a big part of learning is not only learning at your own pace, personalizing it, but also making sure that you can have a motivation to do it. And that motivation comes from 4 or 5 different features or capabilities that Duolingo has to be able to make sure that they can gamify the system. The first part of it is just a streak. And this is very interesting. If you read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, you'll get a sense for I'm not going to go into the book overall, but one of the concepts is how do you maintain a streak? How do you consistently do it? And once you do it after 21 days, it becomes a habit, right? So the streak counts how many days you've practiced, how many days you've moved that forward. Um, and that is one of the features. Now, once you get a streak, that's one portion. The second portion is you'll get into a leaderboard, and that becomes useful as well. Third is you get badges on completing certain items. It's really, really gamified with very different sets of capabilities and features to help you keep coming back, help you keep the streak, help you keep learning, and then personalize as you go along. Now, Duolingo also helps you move from very simple words and phrases to grammar, punctuation, nouns, pronouns, adjectives. So help you with grammar, help you construct, and help you finish the entire program with different lessons. The other thing they've introduced is Duolingo English Test. This is useful for a lot of people who are not native speakers in international locations. Now, the Duolingo test, once you finish this, they actually help you prepare for your TOEFL or prepare for your ITS, especially useful for students who are coming in to the United States, either for college or for undergraduate programs or for even high school programs. So they help you, and this is a certification-based system that you have to pay for. They make money that way as well. Now, it all starts with picking up a goal. Let's say you want to be able to learn Spanish. Let's make it simple. And you can set up a goal for yourself. I'm going to spend 10 minutes a day, whatever it is, you set that goal up. And you can continue to be able to make sure that Duolingo actually allows the system to be able to prompt you, to be able to send you notifications, to help goad you, to help coach you, to help encourage you to keep coming back to the system, to stick to your goal as much as you can. Now, it's both visual learning and also it is learning by means of words. So let's assume you didn't know this. It helps you be able to look at different words, different sentences, form that language learning barrier that you might have. Now, the the growth of Duolingo has been phenomenal as well. As you look through the years, one of the things that is interesting to me, this is not very interesting for a lot of people, but for me it is, which shows you from the initial stages of Duolingo 2010, they started in 2008, Lewis started in 2008. Now, when you go from Duolingo 2010 to 2023, you look at the very simple thing is just the modification of how the logo has gone. They've gone from a lot more playful. This is aimed at kids now, as opposed to previously it was aimed for people that wanted to go to Italy for a holiday for 2 weeks and wanted to just learn Italian passing phrases and things of that nature. Now, a lot more kids, a lot more younger people are starting to use Duolingo to be able to go ahead and learn English, basic math, basic English, basic music, and be able to get the sensibility to be able to move forward with that. Now, new Duolingo users, English-speaking countries, if you itself, if we look at it, Australia, UK, we say UK, this is just the last month or so. In UK and USA, I'm surprised at how many people are starting to use it, even in English-speaking countries, to learn English, which is very, very surprising to me. They probably want to learn other languages, is my sense. I don't get the data that tells me what that language is. Now, even in the English-speaking countries, they're learning math, they're learning English, even grammar, using Duolingo. In Asia, as you can expect, India is very big on Duolingo, and they're mostly learning English. That is phenomenal in terms of the usage itself. Now, how do you measure someone like Duolingo? They're very simple operating metrics. Number one, how many downloads do they have as the top of the funnel? How do they get their downloads? In a conference call that I read the transcript of for Q4 of 2023, about a month ago or so, uh, there are two people on the conference call, Lewis, who's the CEO, and Matt, who is the CFO. Lewis actually mentioned that still a significant portion of the users at the top of the funnel download the app because of a recommendation or a word of mouth from a friend. So that's the top of the funnel. At the top of the funnel, they get a lot of users, roughly about downloads are roughly about the 200 million range. About 90 million users become people that are actually monthly active users. And then you go a little bit lower down the funnel, daily active users about 29, let's say 30 million. I'm just making a round figure up. 29 million actually is a number. And then 6.6 million users, actually paid users. So they're always optimizing to move people down in the funnel. I'll go through that in a little bit. But you look at how well they've done a phenomenal job. So this is Q2 of 2023. It's about 25, close to 25 million, but it went to about 30 million. So 90, 36.6 are the three numbers to keep in mind in millions for the user base. So they are measured, of course, by the revenue. Nearly 70, 80% of their money still comes from subscriptions. They do make some money with the English language test, which I think will continue to grow. And they also are looking to be able to do education programs. So if we go back to the user base, right, they have a very sophisticated, the thing I really like and why I think this is a long-term investment, not just a short-term trade anymore. I used to trade it quite a bit, but now I'm thinking a long-term investment is an interesting way to be as well, is because they are committed to experimenting even on the product side and consistently learning and building new capabilities to be able to get and understand how people use their apps, get and understand their users, and keep them coming. So first typically tends to be new users. So the new user starts on top. Once that becomes a new user, they become current users. Now, some of those users will actually become at risk monthly, weekly, and dormant users. So their whole point is how do we get people to consistently use CURR? That is their current recurring users, right? If they're inactive, so this is current active, on the left is inactive. This is inactive users. Inactives on a weekly basis, at risk on a monthly basis, and then dormant users. So their whole thinking is how do we get people that are at risk on a monthly to reactivate them? How do we get people that are literally dormant users to be able to resurrect them? So they have very specific metrics for current users, reactive users, new users versus resurrected users. Just keep that in mind only because when you go through such a sophisticated system of measurement, This is like Amazon all over again. This is why this company is so attractive to me. When you measure this level of detail, when you're looking at app metrics, this level of detail, when you're looking at new capabilities and experiments, this is Amazon culture all over again. And I love Amazon culture. For most parts, I know some people don't like it. I don't really care about that. I've been at Amazon, love the culture. This is a key part of the culture that is very, very useful for Duolingo that I think is the reason why I'm convinced now that I'm going to keep it for the longer term. So at the very basics, they give you lesson plans. Each of these lesson plans will break down into specific chapters, and the chapters will have specific topics. So they have the ability for you to move from just the basics to move on above. So you'll go ahead and earn badges and achievements as you move along the food chain. You can become a challenger just to get started. Then you're on a streak. Then you go to sage level. Then you go to scholar level. Now, this is an interesting part. It looks like Candy Crush, right? Most of you guys probably think of it. This is the Candy Crush. No, no, no. This is not the Candy Crush app. They look at modeled this on the base of how can you unlock certain capabilities within the application to be able to make Duolingo more useful to the younger audience and demographic. Now, we talked a little bit about their users, the fact that they have a lot of word of mouth users. They modeled a lot of their program on referral from Uber itself. So if you share that, if you go ahead and say you want to be able to, so what users really want is to unlock new lessons, unlock new capabilities from Duolingo. So if you want to do that, you can just add another friend, whether it's WhatsApp, text message, and as soon as they go ahead and download it, or even if they go ahead and click on the button to be able to get to the page, you actually can unlock a free lesson and that gets you more. So the referral program is very viral, creates the capability for other people to get in. I talked about this before, but they are looking at it in a very sophisticated fashion. And the interesting part to me when I look at these kinds of metrics is that they're not just looking at it at a high level. They're actually going down into a lot of detail. This company is completely built on the fact that you keep experimenting, keep trying new things, keep moving the ball forward, but they still have been consistent with their revenue. So in some ways, a lot of people think, oh, they're experimenting quite a bit. I'll come back when they're done experimenting. That's not going to stop. The moment they stop experimenting, that's when you go to day two. It's always day zero. Okay, if you look at how they've been able to take that and move it forward, see the impact that they have on those metrics and measurement on a 3-year basis. And they've realized that a user that comes in, if they've been around for about 90 days, then they could become a user that actually will continue to use it for a significant period of time. And they actually found that the change from when the average number of days it takes for a user to go from daily active, monthly active, or downloaded, monthly active, daily active to paid user is roughly about the 93 days time frame. So they've got to keep them around for quite a bit of time. So they're constantly trying to be able to see how they can reduce the churn and keep increasing the monthly and the daily active users. Okay, so there are 3-4 different ways. They will give you badges, they give you achievements. So if you go to the simple starting league, to the diamond league, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They're also very good with reminders and notifications, both in-app. Now, a big portion of what's also happening with Duolingo is in-app purchases. So if they want to just unlock a portion of the app, or they just want to unlock the test, which is the big in-app purchase that a lot of people do for a certification, for example, I would imagine, that's a big portion that is becoming very, very useful as well for Duolingo. And they also give you streaks that helps you manage your consistency with the app. They've done a very good job in terms of downloads, 200 million downloads. So this was 2023. In the mid of 2023, right now, App Figures goes close to about 200 million downloads from App Store, both Google Apps, Google Play Store, and also the Apple App Store. 200 million downloads, 90 million monthly active, 30 million or so daily active, 6.6 million paid users. If you look at the revenue by category, so I mentioned to you nearly 70-80% of their revenue comes from subscriptions. So 6.6 million users paying about $8 a month, roughly works out about 160, 150, something like that, $1 million a quarter. On a monthly basis, that's roughly about 55 million. And then that moves to about 500 million for the year. And increasingly, they're actually starting to see the growth in in-app purchases, which is tests, which is unlocking student lessons, etc. They also have a little bit of merch. I think that's the fun part of the company. So Duolingo English test is becoming increasing. I'm surprised that it's becoming a smaller portion, but it's probably because the number of users are going up, though. And then the other part of it that they make money on is ads. Ads has been becoming smaller and smaller portion of their overall revenue as more and more subscription users become useful. Some of the key milestones that they've gotten. They started in 2011, 2008, I think is when he said I mentioned to you in the podcast. Really go take a listen to the podcast. If you search for how I built this Lewis Duolingo, you'll get it. They launched their web and iOS platform somewhere in 2012, and then Android app. They've been voted number one app on Apple for a couple of different times. They've done English test launch. They've done gamifications of leaderboard. The watch volume is very good. They've done a consistent job of getting good to the milestones on an ongoing basis that helps them move that forward. Okay, Duolingo's trend, if you look at the percentage of revenue, uh, they've actually had the growth in subscription revenue be fairly consistent from about 70% to now about 76, 79, 77% in that range, 70, a little less than 80%. The growth, if you look in the revenue, it's about 46%. Overall growth in revenue is about 40% as well last quarter. We'll go through that when we go through the numbers. Very strong metrics, very good growth, very strong metrics. And if you look at the other category revenue, that's also growing at about 80%, but smaller base off of a smaller base. So let me just summarize again. 26 million, 30 million. I'm going to call it 30 million. Monthly active is about 90 million, 30 million daily active users on an annualized basis, 6.6 million paid subscribers, 57% growth over year, and paid subscriber penetration as a percentage of MAU is about 8.3, which means they have a lot of room to be able to convert more people who are monthly active users to paid users. That's the highlights. Financial metrics, they're doing about 530 million for FY 2023, growing at about 44%. They said they'll grow about 38 to 40% as well. Again, depends on which analyst you're following. Some of them are estimating more, some of them are estimating a little bit less. So at 45%, let's say they grow 30%, 30% of 530 million, roughly more or less is going to be, let's see, 540 million. So you're going to about 120 million or so more. Let's say 140 million. 140 million, 540 million is roughly about 670 million for 2024. I'll round it down and say 650 million. So 650 million is what they're going to do for 2024. 650 million in revenue. Right now, they're close to about a $10 billion market cap. We'll go through that as well. They have net income, which is amazing, which is surprising for a company of this size, given that most of these other companies are losing money hand over fist. We've gone through so many companies so far that don't have net income. They actually have net income. One of the challenges, of course, is going to be the fact that this market is fairly competitive. So the local global language learning market itself, in terms of billions of dollars, is roughly about, it was about 52 billion, but most of it is offline, people going and doing immersion studies and things of that nature. The real big competition was Rosetta Stone, Babel, which is another app that is available, but Duolingo by far and above is one of the biggest. English is still the biggest language, followed by Spanish in terms of growth. But this is not, this is only one part of the market, is my feeling. The language learning market is about 52 billion in 2022. It's going to go to about 300 billion by 2032. And given that you can make it easier, now the question, of course, a lot of people ask me, not a lot of people, a couple of people ask me is, okay, what happens when I don't have to learn the language? I speak to my language for example, there are ads on the Samsung Galaxy X24. You speak in English and immediately translates using AI, and the other person can hear it in whatever language they want to hear it, and they speak as well, and they can hear it. When that happens, do you need to literally know the language? Now realize most of the people that learn these languages, which is probably what Lewis also saw, that could be a headwind for sure. But most of the people that want to learn a language also do it for the fun and the joy and the mental challenge of doing it. That's one part of it, which I don't think goes away to a significant extent. But a lot of people also will learn the language because it is an expression of being able to be a lot more closer to a specific culture they get to it. And the flip side of the argument is they're also moving a lot more towards teaching and learning mathematics, teaching and learning music. So a lot more growth levers available for Duolingo besides just the language learning market, if you will. Who are the competition? If you look at the paid versus free in one side, and then learning with native speakers on the top, learning with bots, Duolingo is clearly almost in the middle. They give you paid, they give you a free as well. You can learn more with bots. They're more bot learning, if you will. Babel, also bot learning. Rosetta Stone tends to be a little bit more in the middle, if you will. They're paid, completely paid. Rosetta Stone will probably come somewhere to the right over here. This is where I think Rosetta Stone will come. Okay, in terms of downloads, Babel doing fairly well, and look at Memrise, they're also doing fairly well, but nowhere close to, on the education side of Duolingo is number 3. That is phenomenal growth. Very, very good growth. I think in terms of where their updates are, they're doing very, very well. So if you do a comparison, which is what I looked at as well, which of them, Duolingo is free, just like Mango is free, very, very effective on lesson learningness, very easy to use, very fun to use. That's what a lot of people consistently say. It's one of the most fun things to use. And the design aesthetic for Duolingo is excellent. I don't want to go through this in a lot of detail. This is a little bit more old, where people would say direct competition for Duolingo typically tends to be Rosetta Stone, Babel, Busuu, or an Italki. In some cases, for example, you can use, I actually tried this. Go to your WhatsApp or go to your Facebook. Actually, I've used it only on WhatsApp. On the top right corner, to the left, to the right, actually, of your plus sign, you'll probably see a little circle. That is Meta or Google's Llama, which is the AI chatbot. You can learn your language even there. And they have a language learning model where you can, not learning model as much as you can figure out expressions and convert them to different languages. That could also be a competitor to Duolingo in some senses. But in terms of app usage, Duolingo is just way ahead. They have 2/3 of this market, growing very quickly. Most of the other guys are just not even in the same line. Okay, so globally, there are about 2 billion people that want to learn languages themselves, but I think this goes beyond just learning language. This is how you learn. The fact that you can personalize your learning, the fact that you can have learning goals and achievements associated with what you want to learn, and the fact that you have gamification helps you get there much, much quicker. This is a little bit dated. I've already showed you the numbers overall. Okay, so that's Duolingo at a very high level, and why I really like the company. Now let's go do our 5-step analysis. Okay, so on the monthly chart, Duolingo, before we go there, what should we do? We do our fundamentals analysis. Okay, let's go first to our overview, annual statement, income statement, and annual. Okay, so 70 million in 2019 and more than 5 times. This is nearly 8 times revenue, nearly 8 times revenue. So phenomenal growth during COVID, continued that growth a little bit after that. 43% growth is very, very good. And they're doing it with a pre-tax income, which is phenomenal. So 70% net income, 70% gross margin, sorry, not income, 70% gross margin, and roughly about 5 to 7% net margin. I think they'll get there a little bit better. They can do a little bit better is what I meant. So growth has been slowing, 50, 50, 40, 40, 43, 40. Oh, it's actually accelerating back up again. That's a good sign. I like that. Still at 70% gross margins and starting to move the net margin lever a little bit higher. That's a good sign. I think if they can get to a 70% gross margin, 30% net margin stage, I'd be very happy. I think that's what their guidance was. Long term, that's where they'll end up being, is what they said. Okay, total assets, 900 million, almost 900 million in cash, only 25 million in debt, very manageable. This is a very good balance sheet. Cash flow is good as well. So what is their growth? Remind yourself again, they're growing in the recent quarters at 45%, which started growing. Okay, this is 20, they're expensive. So as I mentioned to you, they're a little less than 10 billion. Yeah, they're about $9.75 billion. So this is expensive. For 43%, the growth is not bad, especially given that they are 70% gross margins and 8% net margins, but they're not going to get it cheap. I don't care too much about the 660 PE ratio right now. At some point I will, because this is growing just very, very quickly. The net margin is growing just phenomenally quick. Yeah, so it is a little bit expensive on the 19 side, especially given that it was 7 a year ago. Yeah. So the valuation has gone up nearly 3 times, not 3 times, 2.5 times. Their revenue hasn't gone up 2.5 times during that time frame. But, it is what it is. That's what we can see right now. As far as we can see, this is a little bit of a rich stock. On the monthly basis, this is a phase 2 markup. I can't think of it. There was a little bit of consolidation in this stage, but this is on a long-term basis, stage 2 markup. So you could think of this as a consolidation phase, stage 1, stage 2, still marking up on stage 2. Technically, you could, if you had to look at it in the shorter term on the weekly chart, you'll find this was a consolidation, stage 3, stage 4 marked down, and then stage 1, then stage 2 again, and again seems to be in stage 3 if you had to look at it. But the longer term time frame is still on a stage 1 markup. Okay, so this is, I think it's forming. Look at this beautiful, this is a bull flag that is forming, or pennant. I think it's closer to pennant. Pennant is forming on the weekly chart. It's going to get tighter and tighter, and then it's going to explode. So this is what a pennant looks like, just to give you context. It's still forming, so I'm going to draw this like that, and I'm going to draw this like this. That's a pennant, my friends. Bull pennant, that means it gets closer to this space and then just goes up here. It should go up back again to 240 range. It's right now at 226. Yeah, 226 is where it's at. This is going to go up. On the monthly chart, on the weekly chart, this is saying I want to go up and go back here. At this point, when it gets to 240, 245 stage, it might be in a dual top, multiple tops, so it could head a little bit lower, but right now, seems like this wants to get to 240. This is a very nice stage for, this is a very orderly stage for retest of the moving averages and heads back up again. Okay, let's go to now the daily chart. On the daily chart, look, this is beautiful. You should have bought it at 170. I got it at 140. I don't know why I kept it for so long, but I kept it all the way from 240 all the way down to 170. I'm still keeping it. And a very good gap up after earnings. Phenomenal earnings, phenomenal gap up. And then since the earnings, it has been trying to, yeah, very nice pennant. Let me draw the pole of the pennant so that you can see it. This is going higher, boys and girls. This is going to go a little bit more towards this 244, 224 range, and then head back up to 246. And at this point, I would suspect it's going to take a little bit of a break. It's stretched right now from all the moving averages, so I suspect it has to, at some point in time, come down. The 5 is very close. It definitely, 206 would be a good point to have bought. They also touched over here at 197. That was just 3 days, 2 weeks ago. That would have been another good point to buy. The 198 is where it got to, and it's already 227. Still not bad. If you're a very long-term holder, this is not a bad place to get in. But if you want to be more specific, you want to wait, the moving average will move slightly up to the 190 range in the next couple of, I would suspect as it moves up, it will probably move up a little bit. 190 range may not be a bad place to buy. There's quite a bit of support here. So I suspect it's probably going to get there at some point in time, maybe a little bit lower. Let me just draw that a little bit. Look at that. That would be 180, 190. But if you're a long-term holder, I wouldn't be too worried. I'd probably buy it at this range and then keep it all the way to 250. If you want to take a little bit off the table at that point in time, but if you buy this and forget about it for a couple of years, you'll still do very well. See this volume. The volume seems to be consistently going down as the price seems to be going up. This is going to burst up at some point in time. Moving averages are good. The RSI looks good, still not overbought, and the MACD also seems to indicate that there is momentum going to the stock. Thank you very much for following. Let me know what you think, especially if you've used Duolingo. Leave a comment and let me know what you think.